Hey, what's going on, guys? Today we're going to answer some of your most common YouTube ad questions. Some of these questions are asked in our Facebook group, the YouTube ad buyers group. There's going to be a link in the description, so you can go ahead and sign up there. And we're just going to go ahead and start it off right away. We have a question here from Corin Pilabosian. Hopefully I said your last name correctly. The question says, when it comes to testing different targeting, do you create one campaign with multiple ad groups and inside each ad group its own audience, or multiple campaigns with their own ad group, one targeting audience in its own ad group? I have Raphael here. He's going to help us answer some of these common questions. So Raphael, what are your thoughts on this?
It's all about controlling the budget. So as opposed to Facebook, where you can control budget at an ad set level, in Google, YouTube, you can only control it at the campaign level. So I prefer to have one campaign, one ad group, and stick the audience in there. That way, if I'm testing 5 or 6 audiences, it'd be 5 or 6 different campaigns, one ad group each, and one audience each.
So yeah, just to add to what Raph is saying, is you want to have as much control as possible when it comes to testing, and really to scale. Once you find something that's working for you, you already know specifically which ad group or which audience on that campaign is working, and taking into account you have good naming conventions, it'll make things easier for you. So one campaign, one ad group, and then from there you can obviously do 2 to 4 ads within that same campaign. But totally agree with Raphael on this one. All right, let's move on to our second question here. Albert asks, when you do find new creative that works with the same audience, what is the best practice for scaling? Do you replace the old creative in the original campaign, or do you just start scaling that test campaign?
Well, there's a few things in this question. Let's break apart. First of all, scaling. What I deem as scaling is you're aggressively pushing the budget, not just 2 or 3 other campaigns. So when you are scaling, you're usually doing so vertically and horizontally. By scaling vertically, what you're doing is you're increasing the budget on your current campaign. And by scaling horizontally, you're testing other audiences. If an ad only works in a particular audience, it's probably not a very good ad, and you're probably not set up for scaling. Having said that, let's assume your ad works on various other audiences. You have campaign number 1 with audience number 1, old ad, this is working. Now you found a new ad that works with all the other audiences. What I do is I don't touch that original campaign that's working. I just increase the budget on that campaign. There's no point in doing so if it's working. Now, if it stopped working, meaning it's not hitting the numbers that you need, your KPIs, your cost per lead, your cost per sale, whatever that is over the last 7 days, including today, if it's not hitting those, then yeah, go ahead and stick in the new ad. But if it is hitting it, it's no sense in sticking the new ad in there. You're better off served by using that new ad and testing it with other audiences and launching new campaigns in those other audiences. Once that ad is failing in that original audience, if the budget is too high per se, and you don't feel comfortable just sticking it in there off the bat, you can always relaunch the campaign at a smaller budget. But more times than not, if it's something that's working, audience that's working, and you've proven that the ad beats the other ad by putting them both in other audiences and seeing it performs better, then feel free to stick it in there once the old ad stops performing.
And if you're interested in joining our YouTube ads training program and becoming one of our students, where you'll actually be on calls with us, with Raphael specifically, then we'll have a link at the bottom as well, so you can become a student, join the private student group on Facebook, and have access to all the modules that are constantly updated. We have our next question here by Ann Pei, and she asks, what are you guys targeting now that they're removing keywords? It's about 50% of my campaigns. I'm doing custom intent mainly, and people who search specific search terms, but that's really it for now. So this is a very common question as of late because of all the changes that are going on with contextual targeting being removed from the drive conversion campaigns. Raph, what are you doing right now in terms of targeting for now that contextual targeting is being removed?
I've used keywords in the past mostly to start campaigns, but when I'm scaling or running things in scale volume, I really don't use them as much. Yes, they're going to perform better, but I'm not looking at the ROAS, I'm looking at the profit, what's profitable. I will take something that I can spend $10,000 a day with 50% ROI versus something I can only spend $500 a day with 300% ROI. It's just, the profit is going to be better. Having said that, if I'm looking at my original seed campaigns, the data that I'm going to use, there are different versions of custom intent for search campaigns. So for example, you can start off, let's just say you have a product. Let's just say Gillette razor. Just start with something that everybody understands. You can start targeting whatever your brand is, whatever your competitors are. You can make a group of that. You can make a group of keywords that talk about what type of problem your product resolves. So for example, why would someone need a Gillette? Oh, my face is full of hair, I have too much beard, too much fuzz. You create audiences based off of that. You create audiences based on what's the solution it provides. For example, a razor for legs, razor for your face, and you literally can make different groups of that. So really your custom segment based on search terms is limited by your imagination. It's no different than if you're doing a Google Ads search campaign and you're creating different ad groups based on a theme. That's where you would create those audience based off of that. On top of which, sometimes you have an in-market audience that is that really talks to your audience. I'm assuming in this case that's not the case because it may be probably niche. But I think the biggest takeaway from all of this is now that this keyword targeting has been taken away and you have to play the game with Google, you have to understand, okay, now I have to make my ads work across a wider audience. So whatever your audience is, you have to think maybe what's the next level above your audience, that your current avatar that you have, that you can cover it by doing not only these custom segment for search campaigns, but also some of these in-market campaigns and what they what they have in common. Right now, if you've been running these campaigns for a while, you already have data on affinity or in-market audiences that have a high correlation, meaning they're more likely to work if you test those first versus you test some random in-market audience. If you go into your audience segments, and in there you can see which audience makes sense. The higher the correlation, you see something 11x, 5x, 12x, that's likely something you want to start testing out. And if your ad can't perform on those campaigns, most likely your offer is not going to be able to scale. And that's the whole point of YouTube ads. So you might want to start working on ads. Andres?
All right, yeah, totally agree with Raf on this one. Nothing really to add besides just get creative with your creative. Okay, pun intended. You definitely want to ensure that your creative outperforms, whatever audience targeting that you were doing before, the keyword targeting that was working before. Sometimes it'll work when you have the search terms that were working for you for the keyword campaigns and you turn them into custom intent, but based off of how people search with specific terms on Google. It will work at times. Other times it won't. So you want to get creative with, like what Raf was saying, with your audience and really go on a broader scale when you're creating your campaigns and focus on the creative mainly.
One last thing to add on that is you could always look at, if you have data in your account, you could always look at which placements worked in the past, and then you go to those placements. And if it's a placement that makes sense, something that had multiple sales, multiple leads. You don't want something that just had one lead, one sale. Something that's very close to the topic that you're trying to promote. You'll go to that channel. So a lot of times those channels have a website. You copy that URL, and you can also build on that by building custom segments based on a URL. So that's another way of expanding. Like, you have the data there. So you start from there, custom segment for search. You can look at the placements and you see custom segment based on URLs. And then on top of that, look at what in-market or built-in affinity audiences have a high correlation with your audiences. So that's where I would go from there.
All right, let's move on to our next question. Hi, Google keeps suggesting to up my daily budget, and when I don't, it seems like my impressions the next day are a lot lower. What does this mean? I'm utilizing max conversions with target CPA. I think this is an easy one here. You may agree with this, Raf. I'll go ahead and answer it. If you're doing target CPA and you're not following Google's recommendations, so at times you're gonna see some recommendations within the campaign level. It'll say limited by budget, and you hit it and it basically pops out a chart and it'll tell you how many conversions you will get if you, let's say, up the budget a certain amount, right? So you guys are mainly familiar with this. But if you don't do that, what this guy's saying here, he's seeing that his impressions are a lot lower, meaning, his ads aren't being served and his full budget is not being spent by the sound of that. So it really comes down to the bidding type, and maybe Raf can chime in here, but really your target CPA bid might be too low in order for your actual campaign to continue to serve. And you might need to actually, increase that bid, and then you'll see the conversions or the getting more impressions as you go along. So Raf, what are your thoughts on that?
So as you said, whenever, it's not a budget issue. The issue is how many conversions are you getting on a daily basis. If you're not hitting and remember, there is what Google sees and considers a conversion versus what's happening in real life. So for example, if you are getting the leads that you're getting at the price that you need to get them, or the sales that you're getting at the price you need to get them, that's great. But in Google's eyes, they feel like the bid that you have is too low. So when your impressions come down, it's because you're not bidding high enough and you're not getting enough conversion data. So what you should do first is you should try increasing your bid ever so slightly. Now, what that amount is, it usually depends. I don't know what your target CPA is right now, but let's just say it's something like $20 and that was working for you. Maybe increase it to anywhere between $23, $25 and let it run and see what happens. you want to increase the bid ever so slightly, because every time you do, you want to leave it as such and see what happens the next day. When you start messing with the bids 3, 4 times, 5 times a day, you really don't know what's the right bid, the sweet spot bid, to get you enough traffic at the budget that you have it at.
Perfect, Ref. Okay, let's go on to the next question here. Ernest asks, I have maximized conversion campaign at around $40 a day. It spends the entire budget before 3 a.m. CST, and it's been running for about 1 or 2 days. I understand that it's not nearly enough time. I normally check them after a week. However, after checking, I have no leads generated and a huge portion of my budget is allocated towards display networks. Is there a way to exclude this and only target YouTube?
A few things. Let's just say you have a CPA for an ad. Let's just say $10. You want to make sure that you budget your campaign accordingly, that it can spend whatever it is your threshold is over those 3 days. What does that mean? For example, you have your CPA at $10. Let's say your threshold is, I'm willing to spend 2 times my ideal CPA, and if I don't get a conversion, then I don't want it. So in this case, $10, let's just say it's leads, you're willing to spend $20. $20 over a span of 3 days, that's what you're willing to spend. And if it doesn't happen those 3 days, pause it and look over what's going on. For your next campaign, next time you launch, you can always exclude display placements. You want to put some code, we're going to put it right here. It's about Google AdSense without YouTube, and that's what you want to add as a negative placement in your campaign before you launch it. If you were to add it right now to your campaign, once again, any change you make takes a while. So if you would add it right now, it would continue showing up in the display placements, and it probably won't reflect it until tomorrow. So the best thing right now is pause your campaign if you're still running it. Try launching that like that way, and if you still get results where it just doesn't convert over the parameters that I gave you, or parameters you can choose, you choose at what X times CPA you want to pause it, then the ad is not working. Simple as that.